Well, my phone was telling me it was going to be 5 degrees today, and that would turn out not to be true, as the awesome players headed out for their first ride. I noticed something seemed missing on my bike. I had my gouged up adventure spec bars. I had the electronic crap all over my handlebars. I still had my burned out 606 in the front, which I really like. And out back, I had my half-worn Midas E09. I had my tools in case Chris's bike broke down, and my Pelican box for all my camera gear, my new front sprocket cover, which is pretty cool, and of course my trusty Rock Stomper pegs, which really work well. I had my Moto Overland skid plate, which I love. For some reason, I always have less scratches on this side on the Adventure Spec bars. I still had my bent front brake rotor, which I was supposed to change over the winter and never got around to. Anyways, I went in to go get my coat. And of course, when it's this kind of weather, I don't go for the BMW stuff. I go for my trusty Aero Stitch. And my motocross boots aren't waterproof, so I pull out the old BMW Gore-Tex. And then I remembered it was the hippo hands. Now, if you've never ridden in cold weather with hippo hands, I can't stress how great these things are. It only takes about a minute to pop these things on. It's especially easy if you have the double take mirrors, which are really adjustable. And when you've got these babies on, you can wear a summer weight glove, and the electric grips work great because you're not wearing big thick gloves, so the heat gets transferred to your hand. It also keeps all that wind from running up your sleeve and keeps your hands relatively dry. So if you're going to ride outside when it's raining and it's near the freezing point, these things are great. And there's a lot of different companies that make them, but these are actual hippo hands. Anyways, back to the ride. I met up with Chris and our newest member, Jason, at a Tim Hortons. Jason had just sold me his GoPro, so I was tucking that away. And we decided we would follow Chris and head north of the city. It was really cold and wet, so we kind of had agreed we probably wouldn't do any off-roading today. That would turn out not to be true. But anyways, following Chris's lead, we headed out of the city on this beautiful Sunday morning, and already the thermometer on the bike was showing the temperature dropping. As soon as we got off Montreal Island, we were about 2 degrees above the freezing point. I pulled up beside Chris to just confirm if we were taking Highway 50 or not. And then it was time to find another Tim Hortons to grab a coffee and warm up. We also noticed that not only had Jason grown a beard over the winter, but he also had a loose bolt on his adjuster for the rear axle.
What's that?
Nice beard.
So you want some nippy comment?
We want some witty commentary.
Oh,
we can tell it was a long, cold winter.
Just got out of hibernation.
Now, the axle bolt itself was tight, so Jason wasn't actually at risk for sliding down the road. And he had just changed the tires himself, so he knew exactly who to blame for this technical malfunction.
Oh. That one was good.
Good. Ooh. Nice. Man, those are nice and new.
They only have like 500 kilometers.
Chris, are we having fun?
Yeah.
Where's your heated vest?
At home. Staying warm.
Chris doesn't like to wear his heated vest unless it's below 2 degrees Celsius.
Well, look, since this morning was 3 degrees.
Yeah, look, he was wrong. You can see Jason's bike is leaking Tim Hortons coffee. Good.
Let's go.
So we left beautiful downtown Lachute and decided to head a little farther west in search of some some nice gravel roads, and you know, nothing too crazy for the first ride of the season. Everyone was feeling a little rusty, and not to mention a little stiff from the cold. Well, Jason knows this area quite well, so he was leading us down some interesting roads. This is a nice paved road. This time of the year, they're really covered in sand from the snow cruise. So it's actually nice to get off the paved roads with the sand and get onto an actual dirt road. So we turned down a road we've been down to a few times before, and I had to stop, of course, to turn off my trusty ABS. And as I was catching up to the boys, I could feel this road was actually a little bit soft. It felt kind of squishy. And some sections, you know, you were actually sinking in quite a bit. This is one of those spots where the steering damper actually makes life a little easier. And then up ahead in the distance, we could see that there was some sort of a barrier across the road. So, of course, after careful deliberation, it was decided that we should, of course, ignore this and head forward. Chris, of course, always the gentleman, didn't hold up the rope for me. But then we got rolling, and this is actually kind of the perfect type of road for these big bikes, you know. You can kind of roll along at a pretty nice clip, and especially when the road is as soft as this, it's still a little bit challenging in terms of maintaining control, and kind of a good road to kind of get your feet wet after a long winter of just watching the Paris-Dakar on TV. And it wasn't too much farther up ahead that we came to a second barricade, and this time we could kind of see why, because it appeared that just up ahead the road had been washed out. So a quick little look revealed that we could probably bypass it by running down through the ditch on the left-hand side. So Jason, ever game, jumped in first, and you know, we decided that looked pretty soft, but that was our best bet. So Jason decided to give it a shot. There was some good-sized rocks down there, and it was actually quite a steep little incline. And with a little tug on his crash bars, and Jason was out. Then it was my turn. Luckily for me, Jason was kind enough to dig a rather nice, deep trench through the ditch, which I could follow. After one little stall, got the old 800 running again, and with a little pull on the Adventure Spec bars by Chris, I was out. And Chris decided to roll through on the old HP2. No drama on the HP2 as usual. So we continued along, and we were kind of going up in elevation a little bit here, so we started to see a little bit more snow on the side of the road and a little bit of snow out in the woods. Then this road opened up into a big sand pit. You're actually allowed to drive through the road. You're not really supposed to go off the road here into the sand pit itself. We usually take a very quick little pass out through the sand pit, and because our bikes are very quiet, no one usually knows we were even there. It was at this point, as I was circling around the back, I heard someone honking their horn, and it was Chris. The old HP2 didn't want to start, but after a 5-minute break, it sprang back to life. So we decided to keep on going. Here we see Jason climbing one of the bigger sand dunes here. I decided to give it a try, and there goes Chris. Now the key for me on these hills is get it into second gear. There's my second gear shift, and just keep it on the gas. Now my sand riding skills were very rusty, so I managed to clip this branch, and then this poor little tree here got run down. And then Jason knew about this trail out the back end of the sand pit, so we headed down there. Of course, this is not officially off-road according to Jason, and right away I could see him sliding around. I knew this was going to be a big, greasy mess. And this was a very hard trail to read because some of the sandy sections were actually okay. Any of these sections where you saw the black earth, you knew it was going to be really greasy, and I could see by the kind of wiggly tire tracks that anytime there was an incline like here, there was a lot of wheel spin and it was really slippery. Some spots, if you put your foot down, you could easily sink in 4 or 5 inches. Other spots were totally solid. Some parts of the ground, depending if they were in a shady area, were still frozen. So I noticed everybody was kind of weaving back and forth across the trail, which usually tells you that it's pretty greasy. And this is also one of those spots where you realize that, yeah, there's an appreciable difference in traction between a half-worn knobby and a nice fresh knobby. On the 800, this kind of thing, you end up using quite a bit of clutch to keep it going. You don't have that heavy flywheel effect that you do with the with some of the boxers. There was a couple of really nice rocky downhill sections. This is actually quite a steep little downhill here, and I was really feeling it from not really doing any physical activity all winter. I was huffing and puffing pretty early here. That trail ended just as I was running out of steam, and we jumped back out onto the blacktop. Once again, Jason was acting as our guide, and even though this is now probably 9 o'clock or so, 10 o'clock in the morning, it actually looks kind of dark out. There was no sun. So we popped over to an old abandoned ski hill, and here we see Chris trying to climb it.
I don't know about this.
Gets it into second gear. And then as soon as he hit this steep rutted section, it was all over. Jason decided to give it a try on his 800. And even on this relatively flat spot down here at the bottom, he was doing a lot of wheel spin. So he decided to just cut it short, not have to turn around up there. So we waited for Chris to amble down and had a little quick chat. So while I was putting the video camera away, being the official photographer on these little outings, Chris and Jason headed off. So the only way I could kind of track them down was by following their little muddy tire tracks. And I came up here and I could see that they'd found this trail that actually ran up underneath the old ski lift line. And as soon as I got on this leaf-covered slippery thing, it seemed unlikely that I would be able to climb this. And as I looked ahead, I could see that the two of them had kind of had a little incident, and Jason's bike had fallen over. So I decided to turn around early instead of having to find somewhere way up there where it was steep to back around. And as I saw Chris coming down, I noticed he looked quite dirty. Seemed to have been sprayed from head to foot. What happened up there?
He fucking stopped and I rear-ended him and then he went. Bike started again though.
Hey, you seem to have gotten a little...
Dirty?
Dirty! Who would do such a thing?
I don't know. Certainly not a friend.
And then Jason arrived.
I came all over him.
So we decided that we would try to stick to more gravel roads because the trails were looking a little impassable. So this apparently is Jason's idea of a nice, relaxing gravel road. The snow actually wasn't that bad because it was hard, at least on the bottom. We got to this nice little hill, and Chris and I were thinking this reminded of us when we went to the Photo Waro a few years ago and almost got stranded in the snow and ice and mud. So Chris headed up first, and then Jason was off. For some reason, the snowiest, slipperiest areas were always at the base of hills, just when you'd like to try and get some momentum. This hill's actually a little bit challenging even in the summer. Hit a rock there and got off course. It's always fun when you have to start halfway up a hill. So once you get going, of course, at some point you got to stand up, but you got to have a certain amount of speed before you can stand up. So there I make the transition from seating to standing, and now you have control once you're standing up on the pegs. Now the temperature now is still about a degree or so above freezing, but now no one was really feeling cold. We were all starting to work up a little bit of a sweat. And as I was riding up this thing here and I realized I had a pretty good section of snow I had to run up at the base of this steep hill, I noticed Jason had decided to park his bike in the ditch. Well, there was no way I was going to stop. I'd be stuck as well, so I just decided to hammer it up here and come back for him later. A lot of the times, you know, we'll stick to the shoulder of the road where there's less rocks and the grass offers some traction. But on this day, that was really soft. Like, I'm digging in here pretty good.
He's gonna need help!
So we, of course, got out the video camera, which is always the first course of action when there's been an incident that potentially involves loss of life or damage to property. And we headed down to give Jason a hand. We could see the swervy skid marks culminating in a F800 down into the ditch.
I didn't go very far, actually. I pulled it over.
Jason, what happened? You taking a break?
I thought the life was too easy for a second. Take two!
We pulled him out and off Jason went. With a little help from Chris.
Woo! Nice!
Not over yet. Well done. Made that look easy.
Jason actually made that climb look quite easy on the second try. And this is really only Jason's, this is the beginning of Jason's second season of riding off-road. So he's doing amazing. So we all got on our bikes and decided to see where this trail would go. We had done a loop of this last year. I haven't finished editing that video. And depending on what turns you make, there's a lot of dead ends on this trail network here. And as I was climbing this hill, just barely made it up there. There was a real soft spot there. Now on the 800, I normally like to get into second gear. There's the shift into second, then things get a little smoother. And then came up on Jason, who seemed to be stuck in the middle of the road. And that's the way it was today. You'd just be driving along and all of a sudden you just start sinking in. So Chris was nice enough to dismount and give him a hand, and he couldn't quite seem to get the side stand down on the HP2. So of course the easiest thing is just to, just drop it. That's what those cylinders are good for. And you can see how soft it is there with Chris sinking in, and we all know how much Chris likes to get his feet wet. Then we got back on the trail, and at this point I'm following in behind Chris, and Jason is in the lead. And I started to feel a little optimistic. The trail had kind of firmed up here. I was able to get it into second gear. And then it started looking real sloppy again. We came to this junction, and Jason, who seemed to know where he was going, decided we should all go right. I could see by Chris's little climb there that this was going to be a sloppy one. And you see me standing up on the pegs there. This is actually quite a good little hill climb. And I noticed a bike laying on its side.
Holy shit!
And actually in that case, Jason was able to get his bike sorted out without any help. Now there were certain areas where there were just huge, big, flat rocks. There's Jason giving me a good spray. So I had to stop there so I didn't rear end him, and I started digging in, and at that point it's easier just to get off the bike before you dig a huge hole. And then if you're lucky, you can just give a push on the bars and spin it out of there without having to get help. So we got to another intersection and we did a little GPSing.
We went down there, turned around, about 120 meters, and it shows we went up ahead.
And here we can actually see our tracks from last summer. So this is what we're looking at now.
Back. I lost reception there, but we did a circle and came right back here.
We did?
Yeah.
So what's over here then?
Nothing.
What's wrong?
The road's over there.
Yeah, but
Yeah, quite a ways. All right, maybe what it is, at some point we turned right farther down here and we should have kept going straight.
well, we did turn at the end. We did a.
So once we kind of got our bearings and figured out which one of these trails wasn't a dead end, we decided we'd better just try to get out of here. It was getting near to be the end of the morning and everybody wanted to be home early in the afternoon. Jason was trying to sell his house, and Chris had something to do, and I'd promised the wife and kiddies that I wouldn't be out on the trail all day. And this can sometimes be a problem. You catch up to someone else on the trail and you gotta stop, and when you try to get going, you're down.
Well, I caught up to Jason, and then he slowed down here, and I was on that.
And you know what? You can lift these big bikes by yourself, but if you have help, why not use it? Because the old back isn't as spry as it used to be. And then Chris was on the right side of the bike, so he decided to just jump on and get it to the top of the hill. Needed a little tug on the old crash bars.
It's about 2-3 kilometers that way.
Can't go that way.
So we continued on. Now we could see from the GPS we only had a couple of kilometers to go until we should meet up with a paved road.
Holy shit.
Now here we came up to this really nice little rock ledge you had to kind of drive down, which dumped you out onto a nice patch of ice, which was kind of fun. There you can see Jason digging into a soft spot. Another one of these nice little rocky hill climbs, and I got over on the side here, thinking I'd get some traction over in the grass, and it was even worse. Sometimes it was actually easier just to drive on the snow. Now I see Jason up ahead falling down, so I stop and I kind of lose my footing on the snow and have one of those slow motion fall overs. Sometimes it's nice just to lay there and take a little break and look up at the trees.
Hey, Jason. How are you?
After my little break, I walked over to see that Jason had broken off one of his mirrors.
Time to get rid of those anyways.
Now everyone else in the crew tends to run the double take mirrors, which don't break when you fall over.
At least I still look good.
Here Jason demonstrates the reverse pickup technique. Good for the back. And then it was time to go get the other 800 up on 2 feet. Now, I didn't want to dig a hole here and get stuck, so I'm kind of trying not to do too much wheel spin.
All right, senor, after you.
Now when we came across these spots where there were just these huge, big, flat rocks, these were great. It was one of the few spots where you knew you had good traction, you weren't going to sink in. And because they were dark, I guess all of the snow had melted off them too. Now here I kind of chose a bad line and was digging a trench, and I think there was a big rock down in that trench, and that was it. There's no way I was going forward. And you know you've dug a nice hole when you can get off the bike and it just stands there all by itself. So Chris ambled down to give me a hand, and even with me not sitting on the bike and Chris giving a push, it wasn't going anywhere. So we tried to lift it out of the hole, but it was real deep, so we just threw the old 800 down on its side, grabbed a hold of the old SW Motec racks and just dragged it over.
Oh, my tool tube.
So if you are worried about getting a scratch on your paint, that's probably not the best technique, but it works for us. Little maintenance here. And we're good to go.
All right. Okay. Okay.
One of my tool tubes had broken off,
Douche rope in it.
Oh no.
and of course we can't
lose.
live without the douche rope.
Yep. The douche rope and the mega douche rope.
So we continued forward, and the GPS was showing that we were getting closer and closer to a main road. This is when it gets depressing, when it turns out to be a dead end, which has happened to us before. So far, this road looked like it was going to lead us to salvation. Now, because this wasn't supposed to be a big, long ride, and because certainly we weren't going to be going off-roading, in which case there wouldn't be any interesting footage, I hadn't brought a spare set of batteries for the helmet camera, and at this point the old camera went dead. So we have no footage of the best crash of the day.
Yeah, but no, I think he popped the blood vessel on the top of his eyelid though.
That's gonna be a nice Monday.
It's gonna swell up. You're
gonna swell
should
up
be able to open
nicely.
your eye very well.
So what, a windshield caught you?
So Jason had hit a huge rock, and the windshield had come in through his open visor and hit him on the eyebrow. He was actually a little stunned, so we decided to just take a break before getting his bike out.
So I'll take a breather.
Jack. And you didn't even catch it on tape.
Shall we?
It's amazing how easy these big bikes are to get up off the ground if you got 3 guys.
See that rock? So
There's still air in the tire though.
He's still smiling.
of course I am. That's why I bought this piece of crap.
That's when we noticed that Jason's crash bars were bent over to one side pretty good by the impact. Anyways, we got the bike out of there, and that's when we noticed that the front rim had taken a little hit too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? Get a piece of 2x4 when you get home, and a hammer and just bash it back. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Now it hadn't actually lost any air, so we got out of the trails luckily shortly after and made a few phone calls to let people know we were going to be late and come up with some sort of plan in case we had a flat. And then we decided that what we'd probably do is head to my house and we'd put my spare front wheel on Jason's bike. He got a little bit dirty. Chris's bike as well seemed to have packed on a fairly good collection of gunk. So there was some maintenance to do. There we go. Now everything's all right. Is it a thing of beauty?
Well, I think I might be able to see through it. It's a little dirtier than it was when you gave it to me.
Ew. This is also my emergency bum wipe.
Nice, thanks.
So we got to Kazumoto O'Reilly and whipped out the tools, and probably in about 5 minutes we had my 19-inch front wheel on. So?
Any air in it?
Yeah, we should check that. I gotta say, that looks pretty styling. A couple of 250-pound test zip ties, and Jason was good to go. Front. Got your 21-inch spare. Yeah, we did get a little dirty, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. we got a little excited.
Well, you got a clean front wheel. Yeah, you got some good growth in there. Anyways, Jason, other than a mirror and a front wheel and some crash bars, no damage, and he was on his way home.